She was just a little girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. Her blonde pigtails bounced as she hurried through the crowd, her tiny hand clutching a crumpled napkin. People moved aside, their murmurs blending into the background. At the front of the room stood Pam Bondi, her presence commanding but warm, the kind of person who made you feel seen. She had spoken about justice, about fighting for what was right, but nothing could have prepared her for what came next. The little girl stopped just a few feet away. Her blue eyes, big and filled with something deeper than childhood curiosity, locked onto Pam's. Then, in a voice so soft yet so certain, she asked, "Do you think God forgives bad people?" Silence. The kind that stretches just long enough to make everyone hold their breath. Pam blinked. The question was simple, yet it carried a weight she hadn't expected, because looking into that child's eyes, she knew this wasn't just a random question, this was something more, something deeper. And in that moment, she realized, whatever she said next would change everything. Pam Bondi had faced tough questions before. Reporters, prosecutors, politicians, she had stood her ground against all of them. But this was different. This was a child. She crouched down to the little girl's level, her mind racing. "Why do you ask that, sweetheart?" Pam's voice was gentle, careful. The girl hesitated, twisting the napkin in her fingers. Her eyes flickered toward the crowd, then back to Pam. Her bottom lip quivered, but she took a shaky breath. "My daddy, he did something bad," she whispered. A hush fell over the room. Pam felt something tighten in her chest. "What did he do?" she asked, though a part of her wasn't sure she wanted to know. The girl didn't answer right away. She looked down at her shoes, her tiny shoulders rising and falling as if carrying something far too heavy for her small frame. "He hurt someone," she finally said. "And now he's gone." Pam exhaled slowly. She could feel the weight of the room pressing in. The silence wasn't just people listening, it was people waiting. She reached out, resting a hand on the girl's trembling one. "Do you want him to be forgiven?" The girl's eyes welled up with tears. She nodded. Pam's throat tightened. She had spent her career fighting for justice. She had looked into the eyes of victims, of criminals, of families torn apart by choices that could never be undone. But right now, she wasn't talking to a courtroom. She was talking to a little girl, a child who was asking about something far greater than laws and consequences. Pam took a deep breath, and then she answered. Pam looked into the little girl's tear-filled eyes and knew this wasn't just about forgiveness, it was about hope. About a child trying to make sense of a world that had already shown her its darkest side. She gave the girl's hand a gentle squeeze. "There are some things," Pam said softly, "that only God can understand. But I do know this. He sees everything. He sees the things we do, the mistakes we make, and the pain we cause. And he also sees our hearts. If someone is truly sorry, if they ask for forgiveness, I believe he listens." The girl swallowed hard. Even if it was really bad, Pam nodded. Even then, the little girl's face twisted with something deeper than sadness. For a moment, she looked as if she wanted to say more, but then, she just held out the crumpled napkin. Pam hesitated before taking it. Carefully, she unfolded the paper. Scrawled in uneven handwriting were 4 words. "Does God hate my daddy?" A sharp ache formed in Pam's chest. The weight of the question was almost too much. She looked back at the girl, her voice steady but full of something raw and real. "No, sweetheart, he doesn't." A tear slipped down the girl's cheek. She let out a shaky breath, her small fingers gripping Pam's hand a little tighter. Pam wasn't sure how long they sat there, just the two of them, the crowd fading into the background. But she knew one thing. This moment, this question, this child, it would stay with her forever. The little girl sniffled, wiping her face with the sleeve of her sweater. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at the napkin in Pam's hands, as if those 4 words carried all the pain in her heart. Pam could feel the silence thick around them. She wasn't sure what to say next. How do you comfort a child whose world had been shattered by something she could barely understand? Then, the girl spoke again. "I just don't want him to be in trouble forever." Pam felt something twist deep inside her. I don't think he is, she said gently. No matter what he did, no matter what happened, God's love is bigger than all of it. The girl nodded slowly, as if she wanted to believe it but wasn't sure if she could. Pam squeezed her hand a little tighter. And you know what else? Pam added. The girl looked up, waiting. God sees you too. The little girl blinked. He knows how much you love your daddy, Pam continued. He knows you're hurting, and he doesn't want you to carry that pain all by yourself. The girl bit her lip. Her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her sweater. What do I do? She whispered. Pam smiled, a soft, knowing smile. You talk to him, just like you're talking to me right now. The little girl's face twitched, as if she was trying to hold back more tears. But this time, when one slipped down her cheek, she let it fall. Pam reached forward, brushing a strand of hair behind the girl's ear. You don't have to have all the answers, she said. You don't have to figure everything out right now. Just know this. God doesn't hate your daddy, and he doesn't want you to feel alone. The girl took a deep, shaky breath, and then she did something no one expected. She let go of Pam's hand and threw her arms around her neck. The room was silent, except for the sound of the little girl's quiet sobs against Pam's shoulder. Pam held her close, whispering something only the girl could hear. You're going to be okay. The moment stretched raw and real, and then, slowly, the little girl pulled back, rubbing her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. Pam smiled. Anytime. As the girl turned to leave, Pam watched her go, feeling something stir deep inside her. She had spent years fighting battles in courtrooms, standing up for what was right. But this moment, this tiny fragile moment, felt more powerful than all of it. Because sometimes, justice wasn't about punishment. Sometimes, it was about grace. The little girl walked away, her small shoulders a little lighter than before. And as Pam stood there, watching her disappear into the crowd, she couldn't help but wonder, how many more children carried questions like that? How many more people walked around believing they were beyond forgiveness? Maybe someone watching this right now needs to hear the same thing. Maybe someone out there is carrying a weight they don't have to bear alone. So, if you needed this today, if this story made you think, feel, or see something differently, let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe, because sometimes, the right words at the right time can change everything.